Hey everybody, welcome back to the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. I'm your host, GORDO Games. Welcome back to the full card breakdown. This time for UFC Mexico City. We are a bit southern for this one and a bit higher up. We'll get to that shortly, but we have 13 fights on tap, including an incredible main and co-main, 2 5-rounders, and a pretty good fight card overall. Now, I kind of alluded to it. The big thing this week is going to be that altitude. I'll be referencing it a few times throughout this card. We do have ourselves a fight card at pretty high elevation, which may impact cardio, but no big boys, really. Everyone's lightweight or below, so we'll see how that affects it. No heavyweight slot fest, but still a very fun card, one I'm excited to break down from the bottom all the way up to the top from both a DraftKings and a betting perspective. As always, hit the like button down below, subscribe to the channel, show some love, and let's do this. Get the fight night started with the 10-2 Mohamed Naimov versus the 9-2 Eric Silva, and what is a pretty puzzling fight, right? Naimov, the guy who's fought Malarkey and Wood, really been up there, versus a guy who's locked to TJ Brown. That kind of really sums it up here. But as a whole, these are two guys who I'm not really high on. Mohamed Naimov's a guy who I bet Wood against him. Naimov won, but he took all measures into his own hands. He cheated a bit to do so. I don't know. I think Naimov is a pure power puncher. I don't think he wins minutes too well. I think he fades on the stretch. He lacks volume, lacks takedown defense. There are holes in Naimov's game. Malarkey was exposing that until he got caught. One thing Naimov have is extremely good power, and he caught Malarkey with that, and even damaged Wood a bit as well. He even showed takedowns last time, which is a new wrinkle to his game, but overall is someone who is, you know what, pretty powerful, and that's his base. Against the higher level guys who can pitter-patter from the outside, win minutes, I'm going to be fading him, but at this point in time, he's facing Eric Silva, a guy who is not really the best overall fighter. One fight in the UFC, like I mentioned, lost to TJ Brown, was submitted actually. And Eric Silva rates out as a guy who's pretty solid black belt. I mean, he has some decent skills on the mat. He has a lot of win by submission, but he was really position over submission. He lost it a few times. He wasn't able to establish control on a guy like TJ Brown. And on the feet, although he has a tricky style, doesn't have the same amount of power, doesn't have the same minute winning ability. We have seen him fade down the stretch before. In all, he is a early submission or bust guy who has the ability to go out there and, you know what, do some damage from top position, but aside from that, is going to be doing that mostly against a lower level of competition. At the end of the day, although I'm not the highest on Naimov, I do have to pick him here. High level of competition, I have seen him stay safe. And I do think he's the better striker, but at this price tag, not really something I'm getting to in the betting line. I don't think Naimov's perfect. I think he can make mistakes, but at the end of the day, he is going to be back in here. Although Silva's a guy who I think could have some success if he ends up on top, I don't like his control. We've seen Naimov be pretty sturdy on the feet. I do think Naimov has the edge. Although Silva's a sneaky play to potentially have some round of success, he will also fade with a cardio threat as well, being in elevation. The pick is Naimov, but not my favorite fight in the world. DraftKings-wise, though, I do have some interest, right? Naimov has a ton of power. He was able to go out there and score 91 against Malarkey, 96 against Wood. Pretty good track record at 9.1K, although there are some pretty solid numbers in the people around him. I'm actually kind of interested in Silva this week. 7.1K, he is that, you know what, make it or break it. If he wins this fight, it's going to be early, it's going to involve grappling, and it could involve a finish. And although I don't think he gets it too often, he's that dart throw. If he wins, I do think he scores 90 to 100 points at $7,100, which should be able to break the slate. Again, a dart throw, not going to be in all my single entry lineups, but if you have a large portfolio, you're willing to take a gamble, I do think his path to victory scores very well on DraftKings. Just don't know how often he gets it. Next up, we have the 12-3 Victor Altamirano versus the 7-1 Felipe dos Santos in a pretty fun 125 fight. Felipe dos Santos is well known for his war against Mendonca. His first loss on his record, but put a very good account of himself, right? Went out there, stood, swung and banged, and made a really, really good fight. Even won a round on the judge scorecard. So the guy has skills, very technical brawler, and a guy who showed a ton of durability and resiliency. He also showed pretty good cardio and the ability to push forward. He has a pretty well-rounded game. Victor Altamirano, hometown guy in the situation, is going to be a guy who is also pretty well-rounded. He's landed a takedown all but one of his fights, and he's landed over 92 strikes in each 4 of his UFC fights. Pretty good volume, not the most power, but has the ability to win minutes, has the ability to compete both on the feet and on the ground, and is a pretty tough guy. Now, pick-wise, I'm going to side with Dos Santos here. I think that although Altamirano has some ability to test that ground game of Dos Santos, I mean that more on the wrestling side of things. I do think Dos Santos is a better pure BJJ artist, but I think Dos Santos can work off his back. I think he's a good first layer of takedown defense, and on the feet, although Altamirano has volume, the more damaging shot, I think the better overall striker is going to be a guy Felipe dos Santos, and if I had to pick a winner, he is going to be the side here. But at this price tag, it's not really interesting me too much. He's a very, very wide line for someone who has 0-1 in the UFC, who, yes, fought very well against a top fighter, but you know what, man? If that fight doesn't happen, I think his line's a lot closer. The regional scene tape of Dos Santos isn't as flattering, and he is a guy who I still think has holes in his game, whether that be on the mat, whether that be him being hittable. And although he is super durable, he can lose minutes both with the takedowns and the striking defense coming his way. So although I'm picking Dos Santos and I do think he gets it done, the line is too wide for me to come out here and play at this time, and I do think Altamirano, being tough, being well-rounded, can cause some threats for him. DraftKings wide, though, this is a fight I'm mostly fading. Although they do have good volume, honestly, really good volume, considering both of their durabilities and the fact that this fight isn't projected to, finish inside the distance, I do think it's one there are better options. Altamirano has been content to go out there and score 88 points in a decision win before. And although Santos had a great performance and, fought pretty close, landed 100 strikes, only put up 40 points in a loss, that would have been 70 points in a win. To me, there are better fights in this card. Even the Naimov Silva fight we just talked about has more upside than this one here. And although I think it's a pretty safe one for cash, I do think it goes low 15, it isn't my favorite option for GPP. It isn't my favorite fight as a whole, but I do think it's going to be pretty entertaining from a fan standpoint. Next up, we have the 16-2 Luis Rodriguez versus the 19-4 Dennis Bondar. What's going to be another really fun flyweight fight. We got some good flyweight bouts in this card. Luis Rodriguez here making his debut. He did fight a Dynamite Contender Series. He didn't come out with a controversial loss there, but either way has fought his weight here. That was when he was only 20 years old. So now 24 is a guy who I do think has some promise. 16-2 record, a decent frame, and a decent ability to compete. Good metrics on both the feet and the mat. I do think he has a decent amount of volume and some decent power behind it as well. You add in the fact that he's pretty durable, has never been finished in any of his fights. I do think this guy has the fundamental skill set to go out there and win some fights. He does look to be pretty solid in transition. He does look to be able to hold his own when it comes down to the physicality of things. I do worry for his striking defense and his ability to go up against superior strikers, and maybe even being controlled on the mat. But in this situation here, when he's facing a guy Dennis Bondar, who not only has not panned out at the UFC level so far, but a guy who was knocked out brutally. I know it says decision loss, but knocked out brutally in his last time. I think it's going to make for an interesting dynamic, because when Bondar came into the UFC, he was a super tough, durable guy who has incredible submission game, decent strike in the feet as well, and is just very physically imposing. But now adding in the fact that his chin, especially after taking that much amount of damage, is in question, he hasn't really been able to get off in his transition and, let's say, top control game. And really, we've seen him lose minutes on the feet. This is a really interesting matchup, and I don't really think Dennis Bondar is a prospect they used to think he was. And now he's coming in here facing the Mexican on Mexican soil. I do think Luis Rodriguez, being 24-year-old, has an opportunity to get himself a UFC win here with more volume, better striking, being the tougher and more durable guy at this point of his career here, and being able to stay safe with the transition. I also think the cardio of Bondar, we have seen him slow down. We haven't really seen him on the regional scene go too long. I do think Rodriguez has the ability to push a pace late, being at elevation. And I do think he is an interesting pick in this one. I'm going to decide with Rodriguez here. Not liking what I'm seeing for Bondar. The pick will be the 24-year-old Mexican here to get it done. DraftKings-wise, an interesting one, because Rodriguez doesn't really rate out the best, but if we've seen Bondar finish, we've seen him slow down, we think if finish is on the table, volume could be there, a late finish could be there, he could be a sneaky pivot play at $8,000. Whereas Bondar, although I'm picking him to lose, his path to victory is rooted in takedown upside and potentially finishing this guy, or else I don't think his card is going to hold up. With the takedown upside, as well as the finish upside on the Rodriguez side, I do think it is a very interesting dynamic on DraftKings. And being 8K and 8.2K, you can get either of them. I think it's a pretty good contrarian fight to target on the slate, and I do like them to go out here and have some success. The pick is Rodriguez. I do think he gets it done. He's my preferred play as well on DraftKings, although it should be a close one, it should be a fun one, and one I'm looking forward to. Next up, 155. You have the 12-3 Claudio Puelles versus the 14-4 Chairez Ziam. Interesting one, because I faded Puelles hard last time against Hooker, and he looked the part. I mean, this guy was on a streak before, the knee bar merchant, really. He's going out there snatching up legs like he's Ryan Hall and being underestimated every time. And you know what, he got to step up too soon, and now he gets another challenge where he is a pretty hefty underdog. For Ziam, pretty good striker out of France. He showed really well last time in his past performance, but a guy who is going to be the more well-rounded fighter. Ziam has the ability to wrestle, he has the ability to strike with feet. He's going to be the much better striker, much better cardio in my opinion, much better heart. But when it comes down to a single fast for MMA, and that is the pure grappling, Puelles has an edge, and it's a very big edge. Puelles is very sharp on the mat. He likes to go for those leg locks, those knees, but a guy who is really good at doing so, has won a ton of fights because of it, and is someone who you can't look past his abilities. Although the edge is going to be night and day for Ziam in the cardio and the striking, we've seen him controlled and finished on the mat before by Terrence McKinney and by other fighters that I do think allow Puelles to have his one path to victory. Now, if I sat here and go, gun to your head, who's your pick to win? I think Ziam has the more well-rounded game, and I do think for every second this is on the feet, he wins. If he's able to stuff the takedowns, he wins this fight. But he's going to have 15 minutes to stay perfect here, maybe even less if Puelles' cardio doesn't hold up. And I do think Puelles is a guy who, if he has that one opportunity, can be deadly, can be dangerous, and can take advantage of it. So, although I'm picking Ziam, I'm very hesitant to do so. I actually think that Puelles is a very live underdog, and if this line continues to climb, I will take a shot on Puelles by sub, because that is probably his path to victory. DraftKings-wise, pretty interesting, because Ziam is not a good DraftKings scorer, do not get me wrong. Although he fought great against Figlak, only scored 96 there, has scored 46 in win before against Vendramini. You know what, man? He's not the best scorer, but he is going to have a guy in front of him who he can outstrike and who can finish in later rounds. Still, at 8.7, not on play I'm going towards. With no takedown upside, with very low output, and not really with much early finish opportunity on the table, he's not a play I'm going towards 8.7. I much prefer the Puelles at a 7.5K because we've seen him be able to win fights like that. In a 7.5K, when he's won, he scored 98, 86, 84, 92. Not great plays, but 7.5K. They score pretty well. That includes flash submissions, which I do think would be his path to victory here. He is going to be my preferred play on DraftKings, although this fight as a whole could be really sketchy if my preferred winner comes out on top, because Ziam could be pretty low volume and could be an interesting decision that way. But give me Ziam. He will just have to be careful for those leg attacks for all 15 minutes. Next up, 10-5 Edgar Chairez, 11-5 Daniel Lacerda. I've broken down this fight way too many times, so we're going to fly through this one. Daniel Lacerda, one of my favorite fighters because he's so entertaining. Killer to be killed. Doesn't get a finish in the first 4 or 5 minutes. He loses. And it's exasperated by the fact that we are at elevation here. It's going to be a war. I do think he's pretty talented, and at cardio parity, he's going to have a ton of success, but if he can't get a finish, he's going to lose this fight. And against a guy in Chairez who is super durable, who is fighting in front of the home crowd, who is just a tough Mexican brawler, I think Chairez is going to take over late. As simple as that. Lacerda has 4 minutes to get a finish, and I don't think he can get one here. So I'm picking Chairez, although the path to victory for Lacerda scores very well. You know, the line keeps getting wider, and I kind of get it. Although Lacerda is super dangerous early on, he fades quick, can be caught in submission, and you know what? He's 0-6 or 0-5 in the UFC. I'm not sure at this point. Give me Edgar Chairez. DraftKings, one of my favorite fights to target. Yes, he's 9.3K, but you know what? He was going to get a first-round finish last time and scored 95. It's a pretty good score. I think he can score even more with the high-pace Lacerda coming out in low cardio. Flip side of things, Lacerda, when he wins, he's going to score very well. When he wins. He's going to get a shot here. All first-round finish upside, nothing else from that. If he wins, it's going to be a first-round finish at 6.9K. High upside, but very low chance to get, in my opinion. So give me Chairez. Give me both of them on DraftKings perspective. I do think it ends in the first round, whether it be Lacerda early or Chairez kicking as that cardio takes over. Maybe that spills in the second, who knows. But I do think Chairez gets it done. Fun fight. Let's hope it actually happens this time, but one that is going to be entertaining for as long as it lasts. Next up, 9-2 Jesus Aguilar versus the 10-2 Mateus Mendonca. Aguilar won me a decent amount of money against Shannon Ross. Mendonca kind of had a tough performance there, and you have a fighter who looked really good last time and a fighter who looked pretty bad last time, and now they're almost at evens. And pre-tape, I was ready to play Mendonca big. From what I remember and what I saw research-wise, he has a ton of reach. He's going to be the better striker of the two. Aguilar, although he had a KO, has never had a KO before that, loses minutes on the feet, not the best wrestler, and is more so a guillotine version, whereas Mendonca has the more well-rounded skill set, has the ability to strike from range, is a better striker, more powerful, and can compete on the ground. But the reason I'm hesitant to bet him, I am picking Mendonca to win, but the reason I'm hesitant to bet him is because the cardio is in question, even more exacerbated by being at elevation, and Aguilar is just a guy who's going to continue to go forward. And without me seeing Mendonca getting early finish upside, I think Aguilar can continue to push a pace and look to break him, whether that be with grappling, whether that be with submission upside. I do think that Aguilar has a very solid chance to win this one. It is a very close fight. However, at the end of the day, I'm going to pick Mendonca just because the more I visualize myself seeing this fight go down, Mendonca just be jabbing him up from range, is a much more diverse striker, is a tough guy himself on the feet, and I do think with his reach, with his range, I do think he's able to win these striking exchanges and fend off the weaker takedown threats of Jesus Aguilar. It's going to be Mendonca, although I do think it's very, very close. On DraftKings-wise, though, I'm very tempted on Aguilar. 7.8K, like I said, if he wins, he's going to be breaking the cardio of Mendonca, and it's not going to come early, but it's going to come with takedown upside, it's going to come with finish upside, and he's going to have to push a solid pace. And I do think he's the better cardio of the two to be able to do so. I do like him here. Whereas if Mendonca wins, I wouldn't be surprised with him jabbing him up from range to a decision win there, using his 9-inch reach advantage. So I'm more hesitant to play him. I kind of rather Aguilar here on DraftKings, but another fun fight, one where I do think cardio is going to come into play. And although I'm picking Mendonca, I am very hesitant. It is a close fight. Your prelim headliner this week is the 17-5 Raoni Barcelos versus the 18-4 Christian Quinonez, and this is a fun one. I'm really going to be invested on this one because I do think it's going to go one of two ways. I'm just figuring out how I want to play it. Typically I'd go out there and I'd be huge on Raoni Barcelos. I mean, I am pretty heavy on this guy. He's been favored in a lot of these matchups, but usually by more. And he's facing a guy in Quinonez who, was just finished on the mat last time, who has shown flaws, and Barcelos has fought the best of the best. And although he's getting up there in age, coral belt on the mat, extremely good takedowns and submission upside, as well as having the ability to compete on the feet. Very good volume, very good striking. I think Ronnie Barcelos is the much better, well-rounded fighter, much better ground game, and should win this fight at a high clip. But I think I'm going to lean towards betting the under in this spot here. It's a pretty good price tag, and you know what? The one flaw we give Barcelos is his chin is kind of in question here. We have seen him hit, we have seen him rock, we have seen him finished, and if that's the case, Quinonez does have a lot of power. The hometown guy here, Quinonez, pretty good striker, very athletic, very dynamic, good power in his hands as well, but I think that when it comes down to that, that's really only place he excels here is youth and striking power. Volume goes to Barcelos, level of experience goes to Barcelos, grappling and wrestling goes to Barcelos by a mile, and for that reason, I'm picking Barcelos, and I'm a lot more confident than I should be in an older fighter here like Raoni. I do think he's able to use those takedowns, get the back, and have a lot of success there. We saw him do that against Trevin Jones in a fight where he put up one-on-one. So I do like Barcelos here. I do think he has a ton of success. I do love his grappling here, and I think he's going to use that to win this fight. However, on DraftKings, both these guys are extremely viable, right? We've seen Ronnie Barcelos go out there score 110, 113, 111, 101. Like when he's utilizing that grappling, when he's going out there getting top position and threatening things and finishing fights, he scores very, very well. 95 against Taha as well. Even scoring 59 and 52 in 2 decision losses. The guy is a phenomenal DraftKings scorer, and I'll be playing a bunch of him in my GBP, that's for sure. But the flip side of things, when we've seen him lose, Umar finished him early on, and if Quinonez wins this fight, it's probably beat by knockout, and doing so, 7.6K can score very well. Scored almost 100 points against Taha in a first round finish there, and I do think that's a pretty clear path to victory and the sole path to victory for Quinonez. So I do think if he wins, it scores very well. Give me Barcelos, though. I do think he's much more well-rounded. Should use that grappling to have some success. I'm very tempted to bet him, but I might lean which is the under here. On to the main card. 14-2 Manuel Torres, 11-1 Chris Duncan, and I love this fight. I'm not the biggest Chris Duncan fan. I've faded him to my own peril before. And I'm going to do it again. Give me Manuel Torres here. I know he's a very popular play this week, but I do think he gets it done. Chris Duncan's a guy who has improved that wrestling recently to have some success, but his striking defense is horrible. He can be hit, he can be rocked, although he throws power, is typically slower to the punch, and if he's out in there standing and banging, is going to have some problems. Manuel Torres, we have a small sample size from the guy because he has a ton of power early on, has a lot of success getting these first round finishes. A ton of power in his hands. He showed that with one of the most brutal knockouts I've ever seen in my entire life. Against Nicolas Mota last time, step and elbow, looked great doing so. He is a power threat early on. And you know what, there are questions about him. He's been submitted twice, but he himself has 6 submission wins. The level of competition is questionable, and I do think there are going to be some times to fade Manuel Torres. But in this spot here, in his home country, with a fighter as hittable and with as much striking defense concerns as Chris Duncan, the power of Torres is going to be on display. I do think he rocks Chris Duncan early and finishes him. However, with that being said, this fight is one where I do think it's going to be done early. Torres, although, never been knocked out, he puts himself in precarious situations, can be hit, and when he's standing and banging the way he does, sometimes going to get hit. And in this case here, Duncan does have power. He is slower, but he does have power. I do think this will make for one of the most fun fights in the card. It should be an absolute brawl, and I am picking Torres here. I think Torres is the better offensive striker. I think he's going to be quicker to the punch. I also think he can take damage a bit more, as well as being the hometown fighter. A lot of things to like about Torres, and he's my pick this week. Popular, but I already got 2 units on him. I like the guy. Couldn't come back to haunt me, but DraftKings-wise, one of my favorite plays in the entire card. It's in the middle, so 8.3. When Torres has won so far, I scored 114 and 105 on DraftKings. Phenomenal scores here against a guy as hittable as Duncan. The possibilities are there as well. But if Duncan wins at 7.9K, again, I'm not saying a lot of ifs, he can score very well. Only scored 75 against Ashmus. That was a weird fight. I'm going to throw that one out. 90 against Morales, where he's able to go out there, land 5 takedowns, has 6 minutes of control. I think that's, if he wants to neutralize the power of Torres, he's going to have to use that grappling. But he also has the KO power and the ability to knock out Torres, go well that way. Both these guys are going to score very well if they win. I'm just picking my guy here in Torres and putting my foot down what is a pretty close fight. Kind of like my Valentine, Min Yang Zhang last week. So we're going to pick Torres here for some crowd. I think he gets it done. Next up, 10-1 Yasmin Jauregui versus the 8-5 Sam Hughes. Sam Hughes, credit to her, man. She started off pretty rocky in the UFC, lost 3 fights in a row, but has won 3 of her last 4, and is a girl who's kind of turned around with a ton of heart, a ton of grit, and you know what, some decent wrestling. She isn't the best UFC fighter. She can be out physical, out athleticism, that's even a word, and definitely outstruck. And you know what, against bigger fights, she can be taken down as well, but she shows more heart than everybody, is extremely durable, stays in the fight, and pushes through. I mean, her one win against someone who was pretty highly touted in Altamirano, her last fight, she pushed through adversity and she went out there and she survived the early round and she won. At the end of the day, though, we have the biggest favorite on the card, and it's kind of for a reason. Jauregui, before that last loss, was on top of the world. Huge favorites, undefeated, and you know what? Someone who was very highly touted. Now, in front of her home crowd, again, another Mexican fighter, gets someone who struggles on a lot of areas, and someone who Jauregui's going to have a lot of advantages over. Hand speed, overall striking, technicality, and volume goes to Jauregui. Physicality, I think, goes to Jauregui as well. Pure wrestling, I think it's close, but Jauregui also has probably the better submission game of the two. I think the one thing Hughes has is heart and determination, and it could work to here, but still, this is a fight where I do think Jauregui wins most of the time. I'm not sure I agree with the line, but at the end of the day, she is someone who I think wins. Someone who I think gets it done for the Mexican crowd once again, but we'll see how I look to target this fight. It could go a multitude of ways. I do see finish upside for Jauregui. I do see decision upside. I think I'm going to stay away from it and enjoy. I do think she's a legit prospect. I do think she has success. I do think she wins this fight. DraftKings-wise, though, no way. 9.5, she's purely a contrarian play. You know, she scored 129 against Nunes. I mean, that's phenomenal. But are you really going to play her over Chairez or Naimov or Rosas? Or there are better plays on the slate. I guess she does have theoretical takedown upside, but most of the time she is going to outstrike Hughes to a decision. It could be a finish, but considering how tough we've seen Hughes be, I'd more so lean towards the decision. For that reason, not my favorite play on DraftKings. Give me her to win. No hot take there with the minus 500 price tag, but not my favorite DraftKings play. Next up, 8-1 Rosas Jr., 10-3 Ricky Turcios. Incredibly fun fight. I mean, I love this one. One of my favorite fights on the card. The guy's the youngest fighter to ever be signed to the UFC, and a, let's say, specimen at that. The guy is extremely aggressive with his takedowns with upside. He wants to get finishes very, very early on, and that style is fun to watch. You want to cheer for this guy. And with the Mexican roots, he is someone who is put on this card as a prize fighter and someone who's been really fun to watch. And you know, they got him back on track last fight, but he was exposed before that. But he can't get that early finish win. If his fighters are able to fight through adversity, the guy is extremely hittable. The guy's cardio wore out last time, and you know what? If he's stuck on the feet for a long period of time, he's going to have issues. Face a guy here, Ricky Turcios, who I kind of like. You know, I really like Ricky Turcios. I bet him against he's staying in his debut. But he's a fun fighter because he's just super, super high pace in a different way, though. The guy landed 200 strikes against Heistan, 170 against Natividad. The guy fights at extremely high pace, and with that being volume, and is pretty durable at the same time. Cardio is definitely going to be a side on this side of things. The problem we have here, though, is his takedown defense is interesting. Although he's super wiry and able to get up, and slimy actually is a better word, slimy and able to get up, continually twisting and turning, he can be taken down. Natividad took him down, Heistan took him down, we took him down the regional scene. The guy can be put on the mat, and he's never been submitted, so that's tough for Rosas Jr., but is still a guy who's going to allow Rosas Jr. to get off in his game plan, a guy who is extremely good from top position as well in Rosas Jr., and a guy who the UFC wants to succeed. So gun to my head, I'm picking Rosas Jr. I think it's going to be a fun fight, but I'm not playing him at this price tag. Don't get me wrong. If there's one thing we see in Rosas Jr. is he tires out, let alone the fact that it's going to be an elevation, that's going to be tough for him here. Turcios is going to have the better striking. He's going to have the better cardio, and he's going to fight at a really high pace. And considering he's never been submitted, I do think there's a world where Turcios is able to survive the first round and put it on Rosas Jr. at the end, making for a very interesting dynamic. And a guy in Rosas Jr. they don't want to see lose. So the pick is Rosas Jr. because I do think he's able to have early success, but look for live entries on Turcios, look to see that cardio, and I would not be surprised to see a much closer fight than the line entails. DraftKings-wise, great fight. Turcios, 7.2K, like I mentioned, has that cardio upside, has the volume, has scored over 113 points in both his UFC wins so far, is a phenomenal DraftKings play as underdog. If he wins, he's going to score very well. Same can be said about Rosas Jr., right? He has 2 wins, scored 132, 106. Round 1 victory upside, a guy who is rooted to go out there and have round 1 success, and one of my favorite plays. At 9K, if he does win, it's going to come early, it's going to score very well, and there's probably going to be an early submission. Does he get it? That's more of the question. It's another great fight to target as a whole, though, and I'm picking Rosas Jr., although I do think it's a lot closer than the line entails. Next up, 14-1 Daniel Zellhuber, 12-1 Francisco Prado. Another fantastic fight. I have backed both these fighters before. I think they've done well for me. But different styles, right? You have a guy here in Prado who is a brute, right? A guy's going to go forward, throw with hellish intent. The guy throws bombs, extremely powerful, fun guy to watch, but a guy who can be hit, can lose minutes, can be taken down. I mean, he's purely a forward pressure power strike. Fun to watch, but does that always win styles? Not necessarily. He's facing a guy in Zellhuber who is, you know what, a very well-rounded technical fighter. Very good ground game. We saw the calf slicer. Very good striking. We saw him go out there and pretty much KO Venata. I thought he did. He thought he could have there, but incredible striking. The guy is a well-rounded prospect, and I do like his abilities. It's called the Golden Boy. He was highly touted. I'm not counting that first UFC performance because he didn't really show up there against Ogden, but very well-rounded fighter with skills in all areas. It's going to make for a fun one. I'm going to pick Zellhuber, and I'm decently confident in that. The durability of Zellhuber isn't really an issue, or else I'd pick Prado. I think Prado's a guy who really needs that early finish because, you know what, he's not going to win ground exchanges too often. He's not going to win volume too much. He can be hit, so he's either going to have to break people with pace and pressure or find the knockout, and against Zellhuber, I think he's too evasive, too elusive, and a guy who's going to have advantages here. Zellhuber could even shoot takedowns. I do like, yet again, another Mexican fight in front of his home crowd. Should be a fun one, though. I'm cheering for Prado, kind of, because I do think he leads to a more fun fight, but a great fight here. And another good fight target on DraftKings. 8.9K, Zellhuber last time only scored 85, so he could go a bit sneaky, get a bit under-owned, but takedown upside, high pace, technical striker. I do think he has a ton of opportunities to score well. The finish upside is more questionable because Prado is pretty tough, but pretty fun there. Whereas Prado, 7.3K, if he wins, it's going to be a finish. Like I said, he's not winning fights unless he's finishing his opponents or Zellhuber doesn't show up, but I do like him here as a GBP punt play again. Similar to Silva, but a guy who I do think wins more often. Another fun fight to target, and one where I'm picking the Mexican fighter once again. On to the co-main event. 5 rounds here. 18-4 Yair Rodriguez, 15-3 Brian Ortega. Last time they fought, I picked Ortega. I bet Ortega, and he got submitted first round. He lost the fight. The question is, am I going to do it again? Because it's a really fun one, a really close one where I'm going back and forth because we haven't seen Ortega since, and yet Rodriguez going out there and having world best performances against Emmett, being close to Volk there as well. Like, the guy is good. And although I picked Ortega last time, I'm hesitant to do it again. I think, gun to my head at this point in time, considering there are more known commodities about Yair Rodriguez and how he's fighting closer to home, and I do think it's the cardio advantage, I'm going to side with him here. But I think it's a coin flip here, and I do not like him at this heavy chalk price tag. Here, Rodriguez is going to be winning the minutes on the feet. Incredible striker. He's very good at that. But on the mat, I do think Ortega has success. I think he was having success before Rodriguez was able to find that submission. And I do think Ortega is able to be a tricky fighter. If he is training, he guy's extremely durable, and he can cause problems at all times for a guy here, Yair Rodriguez, who has had ground issues before. So based on the fact that I don't know what I'm getting from Ortega, is his heart in it, is his mind in it, I'm going to pick Rodriguez because I do think he has success on the feet here. But as a whole, I think my most owned underdog this week might be Ortega. 7.7K. He was a favorite last time. He had ground success. In his last wins, he scored 117, 110. I mean, the guy's a fantastic scorer with wrestling upside, submission upside, and who's been pretty durable. So, I mean, he has a pretty high floor as well. 7.7, I do like him go out here. 5 rounds. I mean, he might only need 1 takedown, 1 submission attempt. 5 rounds to do so. I do think he's able to have success. I'd like him here. Flip side of things, you could say the same thing about Yair Rodriguez, right? If Ortega's mind's not really in it, 5 rounds to get him out of there, to land on him at will from range. He scored 102 against Emmett, 104 against Ortega last time, and put up 81 in a loss against Holloway. Incredibly active, great strike on the feet, great cardio. The question is, can he set the takedowns, and what Ortega is he fighting this week? So, great fight, happy it's 5 rounds. Gun to my head, give me Rodriguez, but I'm very hesitant to do so. Prefer Ortega on DraftKings. And last but not least, main event, a rematch. The 21-7-2 Brandon Moreno versus the 15-7 Brandon Royval, the battle of the Brandons. Last time they fought, Royval got hurt. Moreno went on to win the belt and have that quadrilogy. So it's interesting to see them fighting again. And interesting to see how everyone's reacting after Royval just fought for the belt and was getting a lot of love in that fight there. I think as a whole, to describe Royval, the same word I always do, it's chaos. The guy thrives in chaos. He wants to make people stand and bang. He wants to catch people in transition. Not the best minute winner. He's extremely hittable and can be caught in bottom, so he needs that chaos to thrive. And I don't know if he gets it too often here. Moreno's a guy who's been more composed, phenomenal striking, volume, cardio, durability. The guy's going to push a pace forever and has some really good wrestling and submission upside. I mean, we saw him get the finish on Royval against the mat. I know it was an injury related as well, but a guy who can land takedowns, same way Pantoja did, the guy who can control rounds here, and a guy who I think just has more paths to get done. Royval has always been a guy who needs finishes to win, and if he's relying on that, I mean, Moreno's not easy guy to finish. I mean, Figgy couldn't do it, Pantoja couldn't really do it. I mean, Pantoja could once, but Moreno is just super tough, is going to continue to go forward, is very composed on the mat as well, very cerebral there. So I just think Moreno just has more calmness, more ability to trust him here, and he's going to be my pick It is a very close fight, one where I'm kind of cheering for Royval because I kind of want to see that chaos, but I think Moreno has him covered in a lot of these areas. It should be a very fun fight. DraftKings wise though, again, 5 rounds, and every time Royval fights, I want this fight because he just causes that chaos. Royval can be finished. Moreno has that upside. Either way, I want this fight again. We'll go over them, I promise, but Royval, 7.4K. When he wins fights, he scored phenomenally well. Scored 105 against Nicolau, 96 against Snell, 110 against Kara France. Killed to be killed fighter is able to score very well, whereas Moreno has got 5 rounds to work, and in those 5-round wins, he scored 99 against Figueiredo. I mean, he put up 95 and lost to Pantoja. 97 is winning against Figgy. He got 5 rounds to work, and Royval's going to push a heavy pace. The wrestling's on the table as well. Should be a fun fight. I'm picking Moreno to get it done. I will be heavy on him on DraftKings as well. Great. And that's going to do it for us here on the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. Let me quickly run through my quick picks. Taking Brandon Moreno. Yeah, Rodriguez, but it's close. Daniel Zellhuber, Rosas Jr., but it's close again. Yasmin Jauregui, Manuel Torres, Ronnie Barcelos, Mateus Mendonca, but it's close again. Edgar Chairez, Ziam, Luis Rodriguez, Felipe dos Santos, and Muhammad Naimov. DraftKings-wise, a ton of great fights on a target. As a whole, Moreno Royval, Barcelos Quinonez, Ortega Rodriguez, and then Torres Duncan are great fights to target. Throw in Chairez, Lacerda, Naimov, Silva, and even Rosas Turcios. This is a phenomenal DraftKings card. Let's break it down by segment. Up top, Chairez, Rosas Jr., Zellhuber. Those are plays I'm liking up top. Mid-range, Moreno, Barcelos, and Torres. Underdog-wise, Luis Rodriguez is there. Chris Duncan's path to victory scores very well. Aguilar's path to victory scores very well. I like Ortega. And then down low, dart throws, Puelles, Royval, Turcios, and Silva. All of them could score very well in a win. I think as a whole, I'm kind of leaning towards Chairez and Rosas up top. In the mid-range, I'm kind of liking Moreno, Barcelos, and Torres. And then down low, although they all have paths, I'm kind of leaning towards Ortega and then the upside of Puelles or Aguilar. Reignmakers-wise, Chairez, Moreno, Barcelos, Torres, and Naimov this week. Betting-wise, only bet I have locked in so far is Manuel Torres. I'll be betting the under in the Barcelos fight. I'll probably be betting the under in the Luis Rodriguez-Bondar fight as well. And the line keeps climbing. I might take a shot on Turcios. I'll probably be playing his round props, actually, his later round props. Or maybe even the under if we get a good price on it. As well as even Puelles sub if we get a good price tag on it. But either way, that's going to do it for me here on the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. Best Bets video will be out later this week. Sponsored by Coolbet. But be sure to check that out. Hit the like button down below, subscribe to the channel, show some love. Check me out on Twitter as well at GamblesGordo. I do plenty of content, pushing it out where I can. Appreciate you guys sticking with me. So, with that out of the way, guys, wish you all the best luck in your DraftKings betting endeavors this weekend. Let's make some money, guys.